I'll move on to the next part if that's okay.
Go for it.
So, when fact checking goes wrong, correct it immediately. Don't try to run away from it and hope that no one noticed. Someone will have heard the bulletin or the link or the mistake. And I'm going to show you an example in a second. But before I get to that, I want to say I know a lot of journalists involved in this story. If this could have happened to any of us, and I'm not pointing the finger, and I'm giving you this example because this could have been any of us ending up in this situation. And look, when a journalist gets the story wrong, there's actually a bit of solidarity there where other journalists don't usually pile on. They sort of think, well, that could have been me. So I'm not going to make a joke of it. So I'll be looking for mics to be switched off here and for someone to tell me what happened here. Mics to come back on, sorry. Anyone know this story?
I remember this.
Yeah. What
Uh,
happened or what allegedly happened?
so some lads were digging a hole. Was it in Port Marnock? I can't
Yeah.
remember what beach it was. It might have been Port Marnock.
Yeah.
And they were digging a hole on the beach, and they put a big stone in the middle of the hole. And then a kind of a hobbyist astronomer, maybe a geologist, came along and said, "This is the find of a lifetime. A meteor has struck the beach." And he then contacted the news. The news came down, and everyone was saying, "Oh wow!" And then, of course, the video had been uploaded of them digging the hole a few hours earlier.
Yeah. Dermot, do you read my presentation before?
No, I just remember this.
This is the report. A local astronomy enthusiast speaking about this crater in Port Marnock, saying it could be the aftermath of an event, certain that the rock inside the hole was an asteroid which came from above. People were coming to take photos with it. And as you mentioned, what was it? A Twitter user shared a video of a group of lads digging the hole with kids, buckets, and spades the day before. So this story went wild, and this takes us back to the very start of the show of the presentation here. There was only one source, and that source was the local astronomy enthusiast. You could try find a second astronomy enthusiast who might think, oh, I don't know if that's actually what that would look like. And then that would maybe help you think critically about it. But just going with what one local astronomy enthusiast said, we saw what happened. This story was in the news for about 24 hours before the Twitter video came up. And of course, everyone on Twitter was having a great laugh. And none of us want to be that journalist. And I know her, I know it was awful for her. So I'm just using this example to show you of how easily that happened. This astronomy enthusiast was so enthusiastic. He led the reporter to believe that this was the case. And you can just imagine he really truly believed this. And there was no malice on his part, as far as I know, from what I know of the story. And it just grew legs and it became what looked on TV to be a real news story and a real event, and that wasn't the case. So if the reporter had looked for a second source here and couldn't get one, and therefore didn't have the second source for their editor, look, with the benefit of hindsight, you mightn't have done that story, but it happened. And they did actually come on the next day and say they did the exact thing you mentioned there. They showed the video of the lads digging a hole and they owned it. And they said, we said this, and it turns out to be this. So I mentioned earlier about how social media is probably the main reason why we need to do so much fact checking and we need to be aware of misinformation and disinformation. We all get tagged or we get replies to our posts saying, why are you not reporting on this? So something that Conor McGregor has done or something that is a crime. And we are not reporting on it at the moment or at all because we just need time to get to the bottom of the story. We're working through our sources, we are calling people, and it might take us a couple of hours, and we are okay with that because we want to get it right. Or we don't cover it at all because it may not be true. Or if it's a legal case, there are restrictions on what we can say for the moment. So don't get bogged down in people tagging you or saying the media is not covering this. We'll cover it when we have a story and we have all of our ducks in a row and we have our facts and our sources. But if we don't, there are reasons we can't verify it, it's not true at all, or we just need a couple of hours. We also have the benefit of having a legal team that we retain, and we often send them stories to check over. And, they need the time to read the story before we can put it on air. And as I've said many times this evening, get it right before you get it out on air. Another thing that people say on social media, name and shame him or her. That is because a story is rumored or it's in court, it's going to be before the courts, and the court process hasn't started yet. So we are not covering that until that person appears in front of a judge and our court reporter is there writing down every word, and then we will tell every word. So when people say name and shame the person who did that, we'll name them in a few weeks or months when they appear in court. So very often there's a legal process to go through before we can name someone. I know you've done legal training on this program, so I won't rehash all of that. But until someone is in court convicted, we don't name or shame, as the people call on for her on social media. And afterwards, we just name them and we give the details of the case, what was heard in court, their defense, any kind of evidence that appears in court, we will report on that. But very often before that, people are put through a trial on social media and we don't get involved in that. Other issues apart from social media that we face when it comes to fact checking, time constraints. I've talked about this already. You want it in your next bulletin. When a story breaks, we want to cover it as soon as possible. But other people we are relying on for information don't work the way we do. They don't work to the same time constraints that we do. The guards do not operate the same way we do. They don't really care that I want that in my 9 o'clock bulletin. They are investigating it for us. So always remember, it's better to be late and right than first and wrong. In a rush to get a story out, you might be tempted to skip some of the things I've mentioned, but don't, and do all you can to chase the information down. I've talked already about calling, keep on the phone. It's something that's kind of slipped off lately where people think, oh, I'll just send them a text or I'll email them. Some people are reluctant to make a phone call. So just keep on the phone if you want to verify a story. And I'll use the Garda press office again. Often I would ring them and say, look, I have a bulletin in 20 minutes. Is there anything you can get me in the next few minutes? What you do there is just like be really nice to them and never ever say, I need this information now. Nothing will make the guards move slower than a journalist being pushy and saying, I need you to get this for me. Explain the situation that you're working to an hourly deadline. It's not like you have a paper that's coming out tomorrow and you have 4 or 5 hours to play with. And often when something big happens, they're so bogged down with lots of calls from lots of journalists. They might not understand that I have a bulletin in a few minutes. They might have mixed me up with another person who called and think they've more time. So my advice when you're looking for information from the guards is be super nice to them. Don't push them and don't get pushy by saying, I need this now. So those are the majority of my tips when it comes to fact checking. And now I'll get into misinformation and disinformation and the differences between those and the dangers of them. So I love this description from the BBC. Misinformation is fake news created by mistake by someone who doesn't realize that it's false. And that's a really easy way to remember, like, was this a mistake? Did someone think they heard the wrong thing and didn't do it in a malicious way when they told me that information? Or did they think the person who gave them the information had verified it? Disinformation is different. It's fake news created and spread deliberately by someone who knows what they are doing. The purpose to persuade people to think a certain way, vote a certain way, to click into an article based on a headline that's incorrect. So there's actually a really good article on the BBC which explains both of these, which is something that I've shared with the team here. And it really is broken down into misinformation for mistake, disinformation deliberate. And just in our team here, I've just found that a really helpful way to sort of separate those two. Misinformation isn't created intentionally to deceive other people. It's often done like taken out of context, or someone accidentally gives the wrong information. Disinformation is more concerning. It's deliberately misleading. It's based on biased information. So if you are unsure if something is misinformation or disinformation, have a think of the sort of intention behind it. Did someone hear that story down in the local shop and thought it to be true and didn't verify it? Rather than, if you think to like American politics or American news, they often they often know that they're spreading information that's not quite true. So something else to be careful of is false context. So take, for example, a protest. Often there's photographs taken at protests of a crowd of people, and it might be a small crowd, but there's often news sources on Twitter, like not legitimate ones, who use a picture of a different protest, same-ish location, same type of people, for example, but vastly bigger, and they say there's thousands of people here, when in reality 70, 80 people turned up. So sometimes the pictures are used in the wrong setting. An old picture of a huge protest might be shared as if it's the one that just happened today. And the ordinary person doesn't know to look into that a bit more. When I think to, for example, my parents, they're not in this industry, they might see that picture and just take it as that's what happened, and they'll never think critically or challenge it. But for us to be seeing that information and sharing it on our talk show or our news bulletins, we have to think critically. And that's something that you should be doing in all aspects of your media work. Stop and think, why is someone telling me this? Why is this picture looking like this? Do I know this to be true? Manipulated content, when photos or videos are edited to trick people, that's again the prank thing. There's also a lot of those fake websites that want you to click in and read their article, and when you click in, there's absolutely nothing in it. They just want to get the clicks. Fabricated content is something that is honestly just completely made up, has no basis in real facts. This is where the story fake news comes from. It usually it wants you to click into their article. They have a way of making money. Usually a fake story about a celebrity is how that one works, and they just want you to click in, and then you click in and nothing is there. The headline is, oh my God, can you believe what happened to X person? I imagine most of you on this course know not to fall for something like that. You like me will probably scroll past it and not get involved in something like that. But our sometimes our listeners don't know how to separate those things. The impact of if we fall for something like this. So if we as journalists fell for misinformation or disinformation, that leads people to lose trust in us as an organization. And I touched on this at the start. You'll really, really struggle to get that back. People will not remember the 100 great stories you did. They'll remember the one mistake you made, and that is the only thing they'll know you for. So you need to be really, really careful. There's also an issue with listenership, and that is what we base our industry on. We all want more listeners. We do not want to lose listeners. If someone heard something on our radio station once and they later found it not to be true, they would really, really choose someone else over us, and we just don't want that. So obviously we're just one piece of the puzzle here, but we as a newsroom don't want to do anything that will jeopardize the trust that the listeners have in us, or the number of listeners we have. So in particular, this happens a lot with health, and I'll get into that in a second. And you might know some things that the US president has been saying lately. So how to protect ourselves from misinformation and disinformation. It goes back to the very basis of what I spoke about this evening, which is check the source. Who is telling me this and why? Read more than the headline, and I think most of you would do that. And I'm just speaking about the sort of listeners or readers who might not do that. And my final point on how to protect ourselves from misinformation and disinformation is to think critically.